Hello, my little creatures.
What if, and just bear with me here, right? What if every war, every empire, every suspiciously timed renaissance, plague, plug, technological jump, cultural reset, and worldwide coincidence was actually directed?
Directed by whom? Like God, lizard royalty, the International Time Traveling Banker Council?
Lizard royalty. Why would you say lizard royalty?
Okay, see, is that more crazy than um our whole plagues, sorry, and like technological jumps and blah 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 being directed?
Well, we're getting there, aren't we? So, you asked by who, right? So I say,
I asked by whom?
yeah, you asked by whom, and you gave some random nonsense of options. Well, I say no. Aliens. Like, actually, like, literally. Extraterritorial. Uh, Extraterritorialius?
Terrestrials?
Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for.
That's
Extra
terrestrials.
extraterrestrials with a master script, right? And we're just this cast. Like sometimes we have lead roles, sometimes we're background characters, but never the writers.
So what you're implying is that the aliens are just not watching us, but they're like editing history as it happens, like moving things around and just like rewriting chapters.
Yes! What if timeline is less a natural progression, right? And more like a group project between cosmic tricksters and alien committee with a really twisted sense of, I don't know, narrative pacing?
Okay, so what you're saying is that like the aliens like saw the Roman Empire and was like, and they were like, let's spice this up with lead poisoning, or like they saw Da Vinci, like the like Da Vinci painting, and then they said let's whisper helicopter blueprints into his dreams, right? And I cannot stress this enough, but like they invented TikTok to break human attention spans.
Exactly, right? Because this episode is not about are aliens real? We're way past that, right? This episode is what if they've been here the whole time? Guiding, nudging, manipulating,
Manipulating?
whispering ideas into the minds of philosophers, kings, scientists, internet trolls.
Okay, I love how you name all of those people and you find lizard royalty weird.
Excuse me. I Philosophers, kings, scientists are not weird. Who is lizard royalty?
The monarchy of the lizards?
Sure,
Amphibians?
sure.
Are you crazy? But like, are you telling me these aliens are like planting thoughts like cosmic influencers? Like just dropping memes into like ancient Mesopotamia and even building the pyramids while listening to like intergalactic trap music.
I mean, wouldn't that explain the acoustics? I mean, but listen, right? Today we spiral through time, question literally everything, and ask what if aliens have been controlling us for centuries? What if history isn't just manipulated? It's written by something way, way out there.
So gotta buckle in just a bit because you're about to hear theories that are so wild that they would make an Men in Black agent like quit on the spot. And today for you we've got alien philosophers, planting civilization starters, historical resets which were caused by interdimensional mood swings, um ancient world leaders with suspicious visions, and I say that with air quotes on it, like the bunny. Okay, yeah, you got it.
Funny ears.
Yeah, the bunny ears. And UFOs as the executive producers of reality.
And yes, we'll also be talking about alien mind control, cultural engineering, why nobody can agree on how the pyramids were built, and maybe, how all of human history is one big simulation sandbox experiment hosted by advanced beings who just love watching drama.
So, history class is completely cancelled, and you should definitely get ready for ancient aliens, cosmic conspiracies, and a whole lot of what if that just wasn't a coincidence?
So this is Unreal Unsolved. I'm Namrita, lover of alienate. Oh, sorry, alienate. I meant alternative, alternative timelines and intergalactic meddling.
And I'm Nick. And I'm here to question reality and occasionally yell about Atlantis.
Of course you are. Aren't you always?
I just yell.
Aren't you always?
I just yell about everything.
And for people who are listening to us for the first time, Unsolved is a podcast where we dive into the eerie, the unexplained, and the downright bizarre. And then we take it a step further by asking, what if reality isn't what we think? And like always, if you haven't listened to the previous episode, you should, because it kind of ties up,
Yeah, so like go
ties
over
this one
there,
up,
go to the previous episode
which is episode
13,
13.
and then come back here after you're done with that. Come back here. Don't just leave us. Don't go get the milk and leave us.
Oh my god, for those who don't know,
I think
that's
everyone
a joke.
knows.
I hope so, but just in case people have been living under the rock, there is this saying that say that fathers, why is it that every kid who has stories about their father abandoning them, it always goes on to like, my dad went to buy milk and never came back.
Yeah, that's like
So
the saying. Like, oh, my dad went
mom went to buy bread and never came back, and dad went to
Yeah.
buy milk and never
Yep.
came back.
So don't just go buying bread and milk and just never come back over here.
Yeah, don't
So,
abandon us.
Yeah, if you
You'll have
God
to pay,
knows we have enough.
you'll have to pay for our
issues.
therapy bills then.
Yeah, like we'd be sending them to you.
But anyway, yeah. So this is episode 14.
Go listen to episode 13 and then come back here. I will hunt you down if you don't come back here.
Of course you will.
Yeah,
You guys actually will.
I will.
We're back with another mystery, and this one sounds like something straight out of a horror novel
Mm-hmm.
or like a tabloid headline. It's basically a person who suddenly erupts into flames without any external source of ignition. No matches, no spark, no accelerant, just fire from within.
You sound like one of those AI like video readers.
But can you imagine?
You're literally AI. Crazy.
Just fire from within.
And
Not the passion kind of fire.
oh my god.
The like burning kind of fire. So that fire also exists. I mean like skin is burning, fire kind of fire.
Fire kind of fire. Oh my god. And this fire kind of fire, it's not fiction. Spontaneous human combustion or SHC is basically a phenomenon, a feminine phenomenon.
That's exactly what is in my head.
Yeah, a phenomenon that has like been reported for centuries together now, right? In some cases, only the person is burned and their surroundings are just mysteriously left untouched. And sometimes all that remains is just a pair of scorched legs.
Oh my god, is this where the night walker comes from?
A
Because all
dude.
that's remained is a pair of legs.
I can't get over how much the night walker looks
Yeah,
like. It's
yeah,
just
I
a
know.
literal huge walking tool.
Yeah.
And in some other cases, the entire room is scorched, but the fire doesn't behave like any normal fire. Supernatural reference. Why am I hitting my leg?
So doctors, scientists, firefighters, forensic investigators, forensic.
My leg covered.
I don't know.
Okay, so if anyone heard me saying, "Why are you sniffing my leg?"
She was not talking to me.
No,
Let's just be very clear.
I was talking to our dog who was just sniffing my leg.
Oh, and now she's lying down.
Yeah, right next to my knee. And my
Like I was saying, so doctors, scientists, firefighters, and forensic investigators have obviously studied these
foreign
cases,
investigator.
and some call it pseudoscience, right? While others call it a mystery. But ever so often, a body is found burnt almost to ash in conditions that simply don't make sense by conventional standards.
And this is the unsettling part. It's that most victims are found after the combustion event. That like there are no witnesses. No one like sees the fire start. No one hears screams, and sometimes the room is just locked from the inside. Are you crazy?
Can you not do that to the mic?
Do
As you're
what?
talking, you're doing. Anyway.
Dude, they don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, I'm anyway just showing it to you, not showing it to them.
Okay, she was
Do you
just
see your volume?
yeah, okay, but she was just waving the mic around like a
Because
lunatic.
that's what you were doing. So in this episode of Unreal Unsolved, we'll examine the strange history of spontaneous human
Gesting.
combustion, what's been documented, what science says, and what remains unexplained. We'll explore.
Why do you like?
Can you not try to do weird things? We'll explore famous cases dating back centuries and analyze the forensics and look at the many often conflicting theories about what actually might be happening.
We'll also ask the bigger questions, such as like could the body really produce enough heat to destroy itself from within? This not like passion. Ha 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 ha.
Yeah, don't even try.
I can't get over how awkward that was. Not
That
like
was you trying to make a joke.
Yeah, I was so unsure about it. I can never say did I stutter in a conversation because the entire conversation is gonna be me stuttering.
Where have you stolen this from? I've seen this somewhere.
Have you?
Yes. We've seen it together somewhere. I swear to God, recently we watched something where someone said exactly this dialogue.
I have no
Such a
recollection of
thief.
this. If someone said it, I apologize for stealing your thing.
You don't have to apologize. You don't. It's not if I know someone did.
Okay, I'm sorry if I stole it from someone. Another huge, ginormous question is that is there a rare, just like
I think
undiagnosed?
some stand-up comedy. Someone said this. Okay, no, sorry. Go ahead.
Is there like a rare, undiagnosed, like medical condition at work, like one you have, just constantly interrupting me?
I would just like to clear for some people. We are not making fun or we're not taking things lightly. It is an important subject. It is a serious subject.
Yeah, I'm just saying
We
you
aren't. We're
you're
not.
crazy.
We're not taking it lightly. We're not trying to insult anyone. This is just the way we are.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry if you find this insulting or if you find this not that we're not being serious enough. But this is like we're not making a joke of what's happening.
No.
At all.
No, I make a joke of her.
Yeah, it's more about us and the way we just handle intense stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I promise you we're not taking someone burning up lightly at all.
No, we're not. What is
Moving
but like
on.
taking it strongly is that sounds bad.
Moving on.
Okay, but like is this mysterious like fire just happening like a misunderstood crime scene and it's like covered up by incomplete data?
Obviously, one thing is certain the human body doesn't just turn to ash under normal circumstances. Yet, in SHC cases, the temperature required to cause the level of destruction seen should be impossible without damaging everything else in the room.
So what is technically going on here? Because is spontaneous human combustion like a real phenomenon or just a perfect storm of strange coincidences and misunderstood science?
So, this is Unreal Unsolved, episode 15 Spontaneous Human Combustion. Can people really burst into flames? So, why don't we just begin with the earliest known reports of this? So, the idea that a human being could suddenly burst into flames without any external ignition isn't new. The term spontaneous human combustion, or SHC, might sound like a modern paranormal concept, but the first detailed report of such phenomena actually dates back several centuries.
So one of the earliest and most often cited cases comes from the 18th century, specifically the year 1745, and it was detailed in a book by Paul Rowley, a fellow of the Royal Society of London. Basically, in that account, a woman named Countess Cornelia Bandy of
Cecina?
Cesena,
I think so.
Italy, was found completely burnt to ash in her bedroom. And what's strange is that her entire torso and head were reduced to cinders, but her lower legs and feet were left intact. and she was still in her slippers. The rest of the room was largely undamaged, save for like the greasy residue on nearby surfaces and like a faint yellow soot.
And what made this even more confusing was that her surroundings, her mattress, furnishings, wooden floor, should have easily caught fire, but obviously they didn't. Even the candles in the room were untouched. And investigators at the time had no explanation for how such an intense, localized fire could have occurred. There was no open flames reported, no sign of arson, no evidence of lightning strikes or any foul play.
So Rowley's account made its way across Europe and set the tone for future discussions of SHC. A victim, often found alone, burned almost entirely in a room or location that shows minimal or strangely selective fire damage.
And more cases followed, not just in Italy, but in France, England, Germany, and later in the United States. So in 1763, a Frenchman named Nicolas Millet, would you say Millet? Okay, was accused of murdering his wife, who had died in what appeared to be a fire. Her body had burnt almost entirely, but again, the room was strangely unaffected. Eventually, the court ruled out that she had died from a visitation of God, a euphemism historians believe for an unexplainable combustion.
And in 1980s England, newspapers and coroner
That
reports
late? 1980s?
1800s
I was like
1800s
1980s. Where did we jump?
1800s. So in basically 1800s England, there were newspapers and coroner reports, and they began to pick up similar reports and records. And one of the most cited British cases occurred in occurred in 1847 involving a man named John Irving who was found reduced to ash in a similar pattern. Basically, head and torso were gone, legs untouched, and no evidence of fire damage beyond his body.
By the mid 19th century, the phenomenon was well known in popular culture. Even Charles Dickens referred it in his novel Bleak House of 1852, in which a character named Crook dies from spontaneous combustion. Dickens was criticized for using what many believed as a ridiculous pseudo-scientific concept, but he defended the choice, saying that he had consulted records of real-life cases that fit the pattern.
And that's the key detail here. Whether or not we believe that SHC,
Yeah,
SHC
yeah.
is real, the cases kept showing up and they didn't fade with time.
And in the early 20th century, fewer cases were formally recorded, partly due to the advances in fire investigation and partly because of changes in media priorities. But the reports didn't vanish, they just became more controversial.
By the time we reached the 1950s and 1960s, a new wave of SHS reports emerged. And by this time, they were documented with photographs.
You mean SHC?
What did I say?
SHS.
Oh my god. I literally was like, gonna say it right, gonna say it more enunciated. SHC, right? So there was a new wave of SHC reports, and they were documented with photographs and forensic reports and fire scene analysis, right? And what baffles
Invigilators.
investigators, oh my god, I'm going mental. And what bothers,
Bother?
what baffles, what baffles, yes.
Yeah.
What baffles invigilators was that, oh my god,
You're constantly saying, let me do this for you. What are you saying? What baffled investigators?
yeah.
Okay,
Okay,
continue.
what baffled
Don't repeat,
investigators,
just continue.
no, what baffled investigators was that the same pattern just persisted, right? A severely burnt body, often reduced to ash, unscorched surroundings, an oily residue, and there was no accelerant, no fire trail, no plausible ignition source, nothing.
And in many of these cases, firefighters and coroners themselves couldn't explain what had happened. It wasn't just journalists or fringe authors discussing SHC anymore. It was professionals who'd seen hundreds of fires and still couldn't reconcile what they were looking at.
Sorry, I took your breath. So, we'll obviously go through these modern cases in depth very shortly, in a couple of minutes or seconds, right? But the point of the segment is basically clear, right? Spontaneous human combustion has been a part of basically recorded human history for over 250 years. And it appears in legal records, scientific journals, literature, even religious texts. And across those centuries, I was about to say decades, but I'm like, no, it's centuries. The details do not change much.
So either hundreds of witnesses and investigators have
Invigilators.
have described the same rare combustion phenomenon with uncanny consistency, or there's a completely misunderstood natural mechanism at work here that we still haven't fully identified.
So, coming up next. Oh, wait. Before we go on with what we have next, we do have another couple cases to talk about. And I guess those are pretty important.
I think so.
They're pretty talked about.
Yeah.
So I think if we don't talk about it, that's just wrong. Right? So let's go back to 1763, right? Ages later. Before. Ages before. And this is when French physician Jonas Dupont published a book titled Great. Okay. The book is called Okay. I'm so sorry if I pronounce this wrong.
The incendies corporis humani spontaneis.
Or on spontaneous human combustion. I just didn't want to pronounce stuff wrong because I do that enough with English. Anyways, Dupont catag- cataloged, cataloged.
Yes.
Okay, cataloged several similar cases from France, Germany, and Italy, with all having the common themes of victims burned almost completely, minimal fire damage to surroundings, a greasy, sometimes yellow residue. Frequently, the torso and the head were destroyed, while the limbs just remained unburned or partially intact. But talking about the yellow residue,
Yeah.
yellow residue is sulfur. It was supernatural, right, all of this time?
It's not yellow residue.
Yeah, sulfur is yellow residue.
Wasn't it grey
No,
or black?
no, sulfur is yellow residue, you know?
I'm pretty sure it was some other color, not yellow. Okay, anyway, let me continue. You get back to us on that. So, one of Dupont's most cited entries was the case of Parisian woman who had died in her chair. So, her maid reportedly found her as a heap of ashes with only her legs and slippers left untouched. The chair had minor scorch marks. The implication, the fire had originated within her and burnt downwards, something not supported by any conventional fire behavior.
Um, so sulfur typically does produce a yellow residue.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Someone didn't pay attention to supernatural.
Okay.
Yeah. And then in the 1800s, not the 1980s, the 1800s, right? A British medical journal published a report about a woman named Grace Pitt. So she was found burned to death in her home in Ipswich. Her body was consumed by fire, but again, the floor underneath her was largely intact. Her clothing had somehow ignited without spreading flame to nearby objects. The attending coroner noted that her body burned with a strange, slow heat like the flame of a candle.
And throughout the 1800s, similar cases began surfacing across Europe and North America. In 1835, the London Medical and Surgical Journal published a report from a physician describing an elderly woman whose torso and head had burned completely to ash. Only her arms, leg, and a piece of her chair survived the fire.
And you know, this basically inspired Charles Dickens' Spontaneous Human Combustion in his novel. And, you know,
So by the late
that's
19th
how the.
century, sorry,
Sorry,
sorry.
yeah, but basically that's how the whole spontaneous human combustion thing kind of just spread around.
And by the late 19th century, the term spontaneous human combustion had become common in popular culture, like we said before, even as scientists began trying to offer more grounded explanations. However, no theory, not alcohol saturation, not static electricity, not even internal combustion by flammable gases could fully account for the isolated burn patterns and total destruction of the human body with minimal collateral damage.
So, just to summarize, like by the end of the 1800s, over 30 cases had been documented by, um, had been documented in journals, newspapers, medical treatises,
Treatises, yeah.
treatises, right? And all of them had, the symptoms you've described of like lack of fire sources, not the torso being burned, but not the limbs, and blah 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 blah. And there's some of them also had yellowish like fat deposits and greasy residues, like that like deposits near the body.
And the victims often fit a similar profile. They were elderly, female, alone at home, sometimes near a heat source like a fireplace or lamp, but not always. No consistent cause could be found. No witnesses ever saw the fire start.
So from the very beginning, spontaneous human combustion has stood as one of the strangest unsolved phenomena in forensic history. It's rare, so incredibly rare, but so uniquely specific that even skeptics have struggled to dismiss it entirely.
So, after this, we'll examine some of the most famous modern cases, starting in the 20th century when photograph, forensics, and science began offering more evidence but no more clarity. And as we moved into the 20th century, spontaneous human combustion became easier to investigate with the advent of modern forensics, photography, and standardized crime scene analysis. But the results didn't bring resolution, they kind of just brought more confusion.
That rhymed. One of the most cited modern cases is that of
Mary?
Mary
Mhm.
Reeser, a 67-year-old woman who died in Petersburg, Florida in 1951. She was found in her apartment by her landlady, or more accurately, what remained of her was found. Mary's body um, was almost completely cremated, and the only parts left were her left foot, still wearing a slipper, and part of her spine. And her chair was also mostly gone, reduced coils and ashes, but the rest of her room was virtually untouched.
So, this case is widely regarded as one of the most compelling SHC incidents in forensic history. So, investigators noted that the walls were covered in a thin, greasy soot and a nearby plastic light switch had melted. But newspapers just feet away were not, basically, nothing happened with them. So experts has estimated the temperature required to reduce her body to that level would have had to exceed 3000 degrees Fahrenheit or 1650 degrees Celsius. Yet the fire somehow did not ignite the rest of the apartment.
And even the FBI was brought in, and their final report stated that Mary may have fallen asleep while smoking, igniting her clothing and body fat. But the explanation was met with skepticism, like and questions such as why did the fire burn only her body? Why was there no smoke damage in the apartment? Why were the surroundings so in why were they so preserved? Came
And
up.
Mary Reeser's case is just the beginning, right? In 1967, an elderly man named Robert Bailey in the UK was found in a similar condition. Witnesses claimed to see blue flames emerging from his abdomen. His upper body was severely burned, but the ceiling and wall around him were untouched.
And I think it's just mainly old people who have just been
Seems like that, doesn't it?
targeted by it. I mean, again, you've got in 1980, like Henry Thomas, right? A 73-year-old man from South Wales was found dead in his living room. His entire body, except for his skull and his feet, had been incinerated. Yet, again, the slippers he wore were intact, and the room showed no signs of like a normal fire pattern. There were no accelerants, no fire trails, no structural damage, just a burnt body and like soot on the carpet.
And the colonel,
Coroner?
yeah,
Kerner?
I know
Like
it's a
Colonel?
colonel. The colonel concluded that Thomas had burned to death from the inside out. No forensic explanation could identify a heat source sufficient to reduce a human body to that degree, especially in the absence of an open flame or a house fire.
And another disturbing case comes from 1990 in Oklahoma, where George Mott, a retired fireman, was found dead in his bedroom, and the room was completely intact, no signs of fire damage to furniture, bedding, or walls. Yet George's body was reduced to a pile of ashes with his skull shrunken in a way that defied the expected results of combustion. And firefighters, some of those, some of whom were his former colleagues, could not explain how a fire hot enough to destroy a body could occur without burning the room.
And then, if you see more recently in 2010, the case of Michael Faherty, a 76-year-old man in Ireland, brought SHC back into the headlines. He was found burned to death in his home in County Galway, and the body was severely incinerated, but the only damage in the room was to the area directly around him. There were no evidence of foul play, and no accidents were found. And the coroner's official verdict is death by spontaneous combustion.
So there's a modern legal documented ruling of spontaneous human combustion as the cause of death. The investigation ruled out electrical faults, gas leaks, or external ignition
Ignition.
ignition sources. The fireplace was off, the surrounding furniture remained unharmed, and yet the fire that killed him had to have reached extraordinary temperatures.
And what these modern cases share with their historical counterparts are key traits. There's the total or near total incineration of the body. There's minimal damage to surroundings. There's greasy residues or oily soot nearby. There's no identifiable ignition source. And often victims were alone and not in contact with any open flame.
And while many skeptics just point to cigarettes, drop matches, or electrical malfunctions, the physics just simply doesn't add up. A typical house fire doesn't even- like the typical house fire doesn't even reach the temperature required to cremate bone, and yet these victims were reduced to ash without setting the room on fire.
So, what do we do with this? Do we dismiss it as a coincidence, bad forensics, or overlooked explanations? Or do we admit that there may be something happening, something rare, internal, but it's still not understood?
So, coming up next, we're going to be examining the leading scientific theories that attempt to explain spontaneous human combustion, from the mundane to the biologically bizarre.
When we think about a person catching fire, we naturally assume of an external source, right? Like an open flame, accelerant, or a spark.
Or someone farting and
What?
it interacting with like your gas stove
Oh my god.
and it goes boom.
But spontaneous human combustion challenges that assumption. The combustion appears to start from within, in the body itself, and it destroys the victim without spreading.
I find it's kind of funny because now, because we're talking about the the fire starting from within, it's just like your body got fed up of you like feeding all of it the junk, like the junk food,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just like I'm pissed off at you. Great, let me just burn you up from the inside.
Nice.
Oh, nice. That's fun. And like for over a century, scientists have proposed numerous theories to explain like spontaneous human combustion. Some were logical, some were speculative, and others were just downright controversial. And in this segment, we'll look at the most prominent one and explore where the science supports and where it still falls short.
So, theory one is the Wick effect, right? So, why don't we just start with the most widely accepted scientific explanation? So, this theory proposes that the human body, once ignited by an external flame, can sustain combustion over a long period of time due to the body's fat acting like a fuel source, kind of similar to a candle.
So, in this analogy, clothing acts as the wick, and the fat beneath the skin functions as the wax.
Exactly.
Once ignited, the fat melts and soaks into the clothing, which then keeps the fire burning slowly and steadily. So, it's a process that could, under the right circumstances, reduce a body to ash without igniting nearby furniture.
And there is actual experimental support for this. In 1998, the BBC series QED replicated the Wick effect using a dead pig wrapped in fabric. So they ignited it with a small flame, and over several hours, the pig's body was consumed almost entirely, while the surroundings were mostly untouched. So the burn pattern mirrored SHC cases eerily well.
But critics of this theory point out that in many SHC cases, there is no clear source of ignition, right? Victims weren't always smoking, there were no fireplaces or electrical blankets nearby, and many victims had partially unburnt limbs or intact feet and slippers, which doesn't align neatly with a slowly burning fire fueled by melted fat.
And that leads us to theory two, which is alcohol and acetone buildup. So, in the 19th and early 20th century, one popular theory was that SHC victims were heavily alcoholic and that alcohol somehow made their bodies more flammable. The idea was that if a person had enough alcohol in their system, their tissues might ignite more easily.
And this theory, as you may have guessed, has been largely discredited. Even chronic alcoholics do not have flammable blood or fat. The human body is still it could like contains over 60% water, and alcohol burns off rapidly in the liver. And there's no evidence that a person could be so saturated with alcohol that their body would spontaneously ignite.
And a more updated version of this theory suggests that certain metabolic conditions or medications might lead to acetone buildup in the body, which is obviously a flammable compound. People with diabetes or those in a state of ketosis produce more acetone. And some researchers have speculated that under rare conditions, a buildup of acetone vapors inside the body could ignite, possibly via static electricity or localized overheating.
And I feel like that's a really interesting idea, but again, there's very little data supporting the likelihood of acetone spontaneously combusting inside a living human. And it's also uncertain how this would generate enough sustained heat to cremate bones.
Well, that brings us to theory 3, which is static electricity or electrostatic discharge. So, another theory focuses on the possibility of electrical ignition. Like, could static electricity, the same force that causes sparks when you touch a doorknob, ignite gases or chemicals in or around the body?
Some SHC victims were in synthetic clothing, lying on furniture that could generate static, right? And in very rare atmospheric conditions, a small electrostatic spark could cause localized ignition.
But static discharges are brief. They don't produce that kind of sustained heat required to destroy an entire body. And again, this doesn't explain the total immolation in the absence of a larger fire.
So now we're gonna go on to theory 4, which is methane, gut bacteria, and internal gas ignition. So this is one of the more creative theories, and this basically suggests that flammable, flammable gases like methane, they build up inside your digestive system, and under certain conditions could ignite internally.
So, some proponents argue that microbial imbalances could lead to a higher methane production, a spark from static electricity, or even muscular contraction. contraction could theoretically ignite the gas inside the intestines.
Theoretically, right? But there are problems.
Aren't they always?
No autopsy has ever confirmed internal ignition as the cause, and internal gas would likely cause an explosion and not a slow, sustained burn. And again, it doesn't explain the total reduction of muscle and bone to ash.
Very well, then let's move on to 35, which is psychogenic energy or bioelectric discharge. So now we move into the more fringe territory, right? The idea that certain people might possess bioelectrical energies that can discharge explosively under emotional or psychological stress.
And this overlaps with concepts from Eastern medicines like Chi and Kundalini.
Kundalini.
Yeah, that. And other forms of life energy. Some some parapsychologists. These are like, I think it's a mix between the paranormal and psychologists. And they've basically speculated that spontaneous human combustion may be a result of unconscious mind body energy gone haywire, perhaps in a state of um, a trance or rage.
There's no peer reviewed evidence for this, but it's worth noting that several SHC victims were reportedly in poor mental or physical health, isolated or severely depressed.
Still, it's speculative and doesn't provide a mechanism that could explain such a targeted, intense, and non spreading fire.
So, where does this kind of leave us?
It leaves us with the Wick effect being the most supported theory, but it still requires an ignition source, and that's often missing. Other theories raise interesting possibilities, but none of them can fully account for the patterns seen in spontaneous human combustion cases.
And until we witness one as it happens or have detailed monitoring data, we may never fully understand whether SHC is a real phenomena, a forensic anomaly, or something even stranger.
So, we're gonna examine the forensic challenges of these cases, like what investigators really find when they arrive, and why SHC continues to baffle even the most professional and experienced professionals.
So, despite the disturbing and dramatic nature of spontaneous human combustion cases, what makes them so fascinating to forensic experts is not what's present at the screen, but what's absent.
Unlike a traditional house fire where destruction spreads indiscriminately, indiscriminately, indiscriminately through a room or building, SHC cases often involve intensely localized burn, and the victim is almost entirely destroyed, yet nearby furniture, walls, and even paper items remain unscathed.
And this anomaly presents immediate complications for investigators, right? A typical house fire spreads according to known patterns, upwards and outwards, fed by oxygen, combustibles, and heat transfer. SHC scenes break those rules. The body burns in place, often in a seated or reclined position with no clear spread of flame.
So let's just walk through what's typically found at a spontaneous human combustion scene and how it contrasts with a normal fire investigation.
So, when you look at the body, in standard fires, human bodies often remain partially intact. While skin and outer tissues may be severely damaged, the internal skeleton usually survives, especially the skull, femurs, and pelvis, which are the densest bones in the body.
But in SHC cases, victims are often almost completely incinerated down to fine ash. Only extremities like feet or hands might survive, sometimes still wearing clothing or shoes.
And this is perplexing because cremation in a furnace requires sustained temperature of over 1400 to 1800 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 760 to 980 Celsius, for 2 or 3 hours with consistent airflow and controlled conditions. In SHC cases, such conditions do not exist, and there's no clear source of that level of heat, yet the body is gone.
So next we've got the surroundings. Incredibly, nearby objects are often unharmed. Even plastic items which ignite at relatively low temperatures may be softened but not completely burned. And flammable items like curtains, bedding, books, and newspapers may be mere inches from the burn site but completely untouched.
And investigators frequently report only a small scorch mark on the floor or chair, walls covered in a greasy soot, no evidence of smoke damage in upper parts of the room, no fire alarms triggered, and no sign of flashpoints or burn accident.
In cases like Mary Reeser's, the fire was so confined that even adjacent rooms were unaffected. But again, there was no visible fire source, no lighter, no stove, or even faulty wiring.
Next, we come to smells and residue, right? Another curious pattern is the greasy film left behind. Walls and furniture in the immediate area are often coated with a yellowish or oily residue. This is thought to be the result of human fat vaporizing, then condensing on cooler surfaces. The smell is also distinct, often described by witnesses as sweet, sickly, or likely burnt meat.
That in itself is, pretty notable because in many cases, neighbors did not report smelling smoke or even anything unusual, despite being close enough that a typical house fire would have been immediately obvious.
Then we look at time of death and the body position. Victims are usually found alone, often in their homes, and often sitting or reclining. Many were elderly, had limited mobility, and lived a relatively sedentary lifestyle.
And this has led some to speculate that inactivity or unconsciousness may play a role. Perhaps the fire started slowly and didn't cause enough pain or reaction to allow the victim to move. But that still doesn't explain how the body was reduced to ash without igniting the rest of the room.
It's also worth noting that the autopsies were rarely possible, right? In most SHC cases, the internal organs were destroyed. Bones are calcined, and biological markers are obliterated. Obliterated. Anyway, this leaves investigators with very limited data, and forensic reconstructions are usually based on secondary clues, whether it's temperature changes or surrounding burn patterns and partial remains.
And then we've got the lack of ignition evidence. And this is perhaps the most frustrating part for fire investigators. And it's that there's no clear cause. No overturned candle, no faulty device, no accelerants, no arson indicators. And without a cause, the case cannot be closed. Definitively.
And the fire triangle, right? Heat, fuel, oxygen must be present for ignition. In SHC cases, there's fuel, which is body fat, oxygen in the air. But where did that heat come from? That third component, the spark, remains the great mystery.
So, in short, SHC crime cases behave like no other fire investigation. They defy expected temperature gradients, they produce intense localized destructions with limited collateral damage, and they leave behind few clues and almost never provide enough forensic evidence for a definitive explanation.
So, in the next segment, we look at patterns among the victims, like health, age, habits, behaviors, and ask whether there's actually a profile, there's a vulnerability, or even a warning sign for SHC. One of the most puzzling things about spontaneous human combustion is how it seems to affect very specific individuals, right? While the vast majority of people live and die without ever catching fire, mysteriously or otherwise.
So, researchers and skeptics alike have asked, is there a pattern? Is there a certain type of person more likely to die this way? And is spontaneous human combustion truly spontaneous? Or are there risk factors that we just haven't fully understood?
So let's start with the demographics. In documented SHC cases, historical and modern victims are most often older adults, usually over the age of 60, not 80.
80.
Many of them are women, though men are also obviously represented, and in many cases they were living alone.
SHC is not sexist. It like a tax. It goes for everyone,
Yep.
but it is ageist.
Yes.
It's ageist, but
Seems to,
not
at least till now. Yeah.
sexist. That's better than most people in the world right now. That's great. Um, and the detail of them living alone is important because if a person like just combusts and no one is present to intervene, the event just may go unreported until the body is discovered after it's been reduced to ash. But even beyond isolation, there are lifestyle and health patterns worth examining.
One is age and mobility. So many victims had limited mobility, were elderly, or were in declining health. For example, in the case of Henry Thomas in 1980 and Michael Fahey in 2010, both were in their 70s. Some were described as frail, with poor circulation, arthritis, or chronic illness.
And this raises like an interesting point because if the combustion begins slowly, as say as like a smoldering burn, then a healthy adult might have more time to extinguish it. But someone with limited mobility or cognitive impairment may not be able to react as fast, like enough to escape, or probably even more.
But that still doesn't explain why the fire starts at all. Unless the act of sitting still in certain postures, in certain clothes, near certain materials somehow creates a flammable scenario we haven't fully identified.
So, another theory is alcohol consumption and smoking habits. So, we mentioned this earlier that many historical theories blamed alcoholism for spontaneous human combustion. And while the alcohol soaked body idea has been debunked, it's true that several victims were known smokers or had a history of drinking.
Mary Reeser, for instance, was a known smoker. Some speculate she may have fallen asleep while smoking. But again, this only explains some cases. Others had no access to cigarettes, no fireplace, no apparent ignition source.
There may be a correlation between smoking and spontaneous human combustion cases, but not causation. And smoking alone doesn't explain the pattern of limited fire damage to the surroundings.
So, third thing we look at is body fat as a combustion factor. So, another recurring element is body composition. Several SHC victims were reported to be overweight or obese, which supports the Wick effect theory that human fat acts as fuel.
However, not all of the victims fit this profile, and some of them were average weight. And again, the wick effect requires external ignition, which is not always present in these cases.
So, still, if you're looking for a contributing factor, high fat content, limited movement, and isolation do seem to increase vulnerability, if not outright casualty.
Another strange consistency is the location of the event, right? The environment and the setting of it. Sorry. Nearly all of the spontaneous human combustion cases occur indoors, often in bedrooms or living rooms. The victim is usually seated or lying down, and they're rarely ever found in active positions like walking or standing.
And there are also environmental patterns, like the presence of synthetic clothing, upholstered furniture, which may sometimes aid in smothering fires, poor ventilation, and dry air conditions.
And in some cases, small like space heaters or things like electric blankets were present, but often they were turned off or unplugged or just not on.
Another point is emotional or psychological state. Now, here's where it gets speculative, right? But it's obviously worth mentioning. Some, research-
Some Richards.
some researchers have noted that the SHC victims often had a history of depression, grief, or trauma. Otherwise,
Yeah, sorry. We've got some
others
more
were reported
Richards over
deeply
here.
religious, reclusive, or described as emotionally volatile.
Um, are there any Richards you
We've
know
moved
who
on,
are
move on.
yeah, they're emotionally volatile or but all of this has basically led to fringe theories involving psychosomatic ignition, which is the idea that intense emotion could trigger a physiological response so extreme that it generates heat.
So scientific evidence supports that theory, but it's mentioned in both forensic and parapsychological literature.
But just to have like a summary of patterns of what we know so far, is that in most spontaneous human combustion victims, they were elderly, had limited mobility, were often alone at home, may have been smokers, and sometimes were obese and had poor circulation, and they died in settings with soft furnishing but no active fire.
But here's the problem. There are millions of people who match that description, and only a tiny handful have ever died this way. So, even with these patterns, no consistent predictive model exists. Which brings us back to the original question, why them and why then?
That rhymes. So, coming up next, we're going to explore how the scientific community and the public has responded to spontaneous human combustion, from debunkers to believers, from hoaxes to honest mysteries, and we'll ask whether we should be spectacled. No,
Skeptical.
skeptical. Yes, not spectacled. That's having glasses. Should
But
we?
people who need it should also be spectacle.
Yeah, yeah, be spectacled and skeptical, or we should be unsettled. You know it. Yeah, you get what I mean.
So, despite centuries of documented cases and dozens of forensic reports, spontaneous human combustion remains a controversial subject. And not just because of its gruesome nature, but because no one can agree on what it actually is.
And I mean, you could ask a fire investigator or a medical examiner or a chemist and even a paranormal researcher what SHC means exactly, and you'll likely get four completely different answers. Because this isn't just a mystery, it's a collision between science and anomaly, and that makes it very difficult to classify.
So, let's look at the three main perspectives that have kind of dominated this debate. We have the scientific skeptics, the forensic agnostics, and the anomalist or paranormal community.
So, let's like dive in. Let's start burning up into the first one.
Oh my
Let's start
god.
burning up the first one, guys.
Oh my god.
The scientific skeptics. That is an alteration for those who don't know. But most mainstream scientists reject spontaneous human combustion as a real standalone phenomenon, and their argument is simple: human bodies do not spontaneously ignite. Instead, they believe that spontaneous human combustion is a combination of an undetected ignition source, like cigarettes, and poorly understood fire behavior and misinterpretation of the scene.
I love how their points for this is you are wrong.
Yeah, everything
Like
you've done
you
wrong.
can't see anything, you can't make out a scene. Like you've been doing this
You
for
can't understand the
years.
fire.
You've been doing this for years. You've been investigating the scene, but
Yeah.
hey, you don't know what to do in life.
Yeah. Yeah.
All your 25 years of job was for
Why
nothing.
25?
I don't know, it just seems like a
Experienced.
yeah, no. I mean, I would believe someone who's like 25 years and something knows a lot of shit.
But really? Do you really
Yeah.
think? I think like 30 and above.
No, I think 25 is like a good place to know shit because
But you're
you
kind
know
of
no, the
right.
point
Once
is
once you
yeah,
pass 30, you're like done with the job. You don't care anymore.
yeah, but I also feel exactly 25 is the point where you like
You're
after
about to
this you
retire.
stay, you're just a legend. Like seriously, you're in one job for like 30 years in the same place.
Yeah.
You should
You're
be
just
like,
crazy. How are you doing this?
but like 25 seems like a good
Yeah.
base.
Yeah, like how have you
If
put
any of
in?
you have stayed in your same job for more than 30 years, please let us know. It's fascinating to me.
Yeah. Do you
Like
think
why?
you could ever
Why would you?
don't insult them?
I'm not insulting them. I'm questioning genuine curiosity. Like why? Like what is it? Is it just that
The people?
that's your passion,
Or
or it's maybe you
but
get
for
to
a lot
interact
of
with
people
people?
who stay in the same job for like up like 30 years, it's very much that they can't get the same kind of job anywhere else.
I don't think that. I feel
Really?
like See, the thing is, if someone doesn't want to work a certain place,
Yeah.
they would even do anything else if they don't want to be there. They
Mm.
would even just go sell newspapers if they had to, right? I feel like the only reason you would stay for so long is if you're
Mhm.
extremely passionate about it.
Yeah. I
Only
mean,
your
like,
passion would let you stick through nonsense procedural work every single day.
yeah. But I mean, like, it's kind of related to the point I'm saying is that you won't find what you're doing anywhere else. What job
Not
you are doing?
necessarily. Not necessarily.
Are you telling me every single every single job placement for a particular job is going to have the same task that you are in love with?
No, that's
Obviously
true.
not.
But then I don't
Like,
think
you
the
might
only
have a
reason that
really-
someone stays back is because, oh my god, I will never get the same two people around in front
No,
of
we're
me
not
saying
talking about
hello, good
people.
morning.
No, we're not talking about people. We're talking.
Where that accent
I
came
know,
from.
neither do I. But we're not talking about people. We're talking about the stuff
That's
they're
what I'm
doing.
saying. That the people around you
Like,
also.
maybe your bosses.
Are we screaming?
Yeah, well,
I feel like we are.
but maybe you're.
Oh my god,
like,
this reminds me of that Smosh thing. I'm overreacting. I should calm down. But anyway, do you know what I'm talking about?
I know exactly what you're talking about because I watched Smosh.
I know that you know.
It's Angela going, I need to calm down. I'm an adult.
Okay, like I was saying, so I don't think
It's like, are you kidding?
I think we've moved on from that. Thank you.
I didn't.
What
I
you,
did
if
not.
if we move on in the speed that you move on, each
You
episode
would die.
of
You would
ours,
spontaneous
each episode of ours would be like 3 and 30 days long, and I'm not interested. And I don't think anyone wants to hear a 30-day episode.
I'm offended.
Good. I
I'm
like
so
the silence. It's
Offended.
better.
I'm so offended. You just want me to shut up this entire episode? I'm not talking again.
Yeah, right. You have like way too much to say to ever shut up. Well, no, what I'm
So
saying.
rude. Like, does anyone care for me out there?
Nope. Not at all. I love you.
No, you don't. You
Okay,
little.
but that's fine. I mean, you're allowed to live with your own delusion. But the delusion that I don't love you. I mean, you can live with that if you
Sure,
want.
sure.
Okay.
What were you even talking about?
No, so I was saying that I'm sure the people you have around you is also
Yeah.
a major point of why you would want to stay in the same place.
Yeah, okay, let's move on. Do you think you could stay in your job for 30 years, your current job?
For 30 years?
For 30 years.
I would love to.
Yeah?
But my boss needs to like really pick up my salary. Like,
Yeah.
go way much.
Yeah, okay. I think I would stay at my job.
Yeah,
but I
sure. The
would
job
want-
you don't go to and
Yeah,
you don't
no,
have, which is non-existent.
Guys, I'm not like a
Like, I love my job. I
Yeah.
love the people I'm with. I love getting up, going every morning and coming back. And, I love every part of that.
I love how she's saying this to you
Yeah.
guys, but then every single day she's like, oh, can't I just work from home today?
I say it, see, there's a point where I reach saturation with work where I'm like, can I just work from home for like the rest of eternity?
Yeah.
And then I get that break somehow or the other.
Yeah.
And after that, I'm perfectly okay
Yeah,
going back.
okay.
It's just I need that little break. So the past 2 weeks have I ever said that, oh my god, I have to go to work?
Yesterday.
I never say I have to go. You would
Oh,
like work
okay.
from home and I
Yeah.
said no, I don't. I won't.
Yeah, okay.
Exactly. So
I
like
think-
you asked me a question, Sharon, let me finish it.
I think you would only not switch jobs. Wait, no, let me I think the only reason you would switch jobs from the place you're at is if you get like a massive salary raise.
That's the only issue I have right now,
Right.
right? I feel like the pay is not equal to the amount of work I'm doing.
Right.
And the reason I'm only here because I'm at this point I'm looking more like experience than
wise.
at salary.
Yeah.
But I obviously cannot live like this for the rest of my life.
I think
right?
he's like constantly stressed every single day. Like the dude does not know how to use the internet. You're teaching him all of this stuff. You're literally
but-
doing everyone's job.
Exactly, right? So I'm like, so obviously that way the salary is not
Yeah.
nothing close to what I should be getting.
Yeah.
But right now I'm
Just-
learning a lot just going
Right.
to office every
Right.
single day, right?
Right.
So that to
Resilience.
me, that not just resilience, just about everything.
Yeah.
So that to me is a lot more important at this stage.
Yeah.
But this particular job I'm in, I will not continue for maybe
Yeah.
more than a year from now, because that's when I would have reached that point.
Yeah.
Right? That there has to
You
be
would
a-
not like you would rather spontaneously human combust than work for more than a year in this place.
No, it's not that extreme.
Okay, fine. But currently the job I'm at is school, and I can't wait to get out of it.
Yeah, well, no one, you can't even.
No
you
one
have-
cares.
You have no say in this. You genuinely cannot
Yeah.
compare school and work.
Yeah, don't get paid. I do so much work,
And then you get 3 months of holidays.
Okay, 3 months only because I finished my GCSEs.
Whatever it
Early.
is, you get 3 months of holidays.
Because not everyone, but usually I don't.
Whatever it is, you get 3. Okay,
Usually
fine.
I
okay,
don't.
Fine.
Usually
You
I
get-
get 2 weeks. Usually I get
Your
2
summer
weeks.
is never 2 weeks.
Usually I
It's
get
never. Oh my god, the delusion you stay in.
Usually I get 2 weeks.
No,
Because,
sure.
yeah, no, because it ends around the first week of July, and by the end of August I'm back.
Guys, 2 weeks. Amazing,
Oh
no?
my god, not 2 weeks.
Yeah,
months.
exactly my point.
But not actually 2 months, because around like 3
I
weeks.
gave you so many
Yeah.
ways
I
to
realized.
rectify yourself.
Yeah, but like around 3 weeks, so close to a month. But like I definitely do more work than you at school, and I don't get paid for it.
You do more work.
For sure,
The only thing you're doing is for yourself.
exactly.
You're not working for anyone. You're doing it for yourself. That's not work.
It's work.
No, it's not.
I have to sit down.
Work
and do
is when you
shit.
do it for someone else. Or you do it for
False.
something
False.
else.
No, that's not true. People work for themselves. Are you telling me they don't work because they're working for themselves?
So tell me one. You think people work for themselves?
Yes.
You're telling me just sit and design their own house and that's their work? No.
Yeah.
That's a hobby. No, that's a DIY. No one
No.
works for themselves.
Yes,
You can't work for
entrepreneurs,
yourself.
you idiot, entrepreneurs.
They are working to put the product they've made out or whatever. No one is working for themselves.
Yeah, people work for themselves. Do you want
The only way you-
people work for themselves?
I didn't catch that. Could you try again?
Exactly. Because Siri is like, what is this nonsense she's saying?
Can people work for themselves? Can people work for
The
themselves?
issue is you are going so much in the literal way. I'm telling you that.
Yes, people can work for themselves. Self-employment involves operating one's own business or working as a contractor or a freelancer, earning income directly from their work. Is school considered work? Can school be considered work? Can school?
But anyway, now that you've brought up this whole self-employed, again, I'm saying no one is sitting.
work.
You're still stuck there, aren't you?
It can be seen as a form of work, particularly in the sense that it requires effort, dedication, a structured schedule similar to a job. Haha.
Coming back to the self-employed, do these people sit in their couch the whole day and are they just earning money?
You never know. You never know.
That's
Like,
the beauty. At the age of 15, you can think that's how work happens.
Okay, but you genuinely never know, because like, let's say a person who's like, they're what's the word, like coding, like
Okay.
could genuinely be working from
Sitting at
home,
home, doing nothing.
working from home.
Nah, what did I say? Sitting at home on a sofa and do nothing and money comes. Is that how it works?
Billionaires, because they have people working for them.
No. They have done they have put all the hard work into. Now they can sit. Even
Yeah.
you'll never see a billionaire just sitting and chilling at his house. He's doing 10,000 different
Really?
things. Of course.
If you have so much money, why are you working? Like,
Because that money will go like this.
let it go like this. You had your fun time.
That's what I'm saying.
You bought your Bugatti. You bought your
at the
Lamborghini.
age of 15.
You bought your Ferraris. Let it go. You had your fun.
That's the thing. No one wants to be rich for 5 minutes.
Let them be rich for 5 minutes.
No one wants to be rich for 5 minutes. Why would you want to be rich for 5 minutes?
Because you're gonna die.
Not in 5 minutes.
You never know.
Not in 5
You
minutes.
never know when a truck
Okay,
is just gonna
fine.
crash into
Okay,
you.
great. Then you still want to leave something behind for the people who are dependent on you.
No, let them earn their own money
Oh my god.
before they spontaneously human combust.
Okay, so getting back to why we're here. They so they often point to the Wick effect as a sufficient. I feel like we're talking about something so different. Just for the people who went on this whole rant with us, right? She spoke about scientific skeptics who basically
The
don't consider
alliteration.
SHC as a real cause and their
They blamed it on everyone
their whole
else.
debate is that people don't know how to
Yeah.
investigate.
And
Okay,
fire doesn't work as fire does.
no, that you just
Poor
don't understand the behavior of fire.
because it's not working. It's supposed to work.
No, you are not understanding how it's working. There's a difference.
No, because it's not working as it's
Shut
supposed
up.
to work.
Shut up. So they often point to the Wick effect as a sufficient explanation. Yeah, the destruction is extreme, but it's not impossible. They argue, especially under very specific conditions. So to the skeptics, what looks like spontaneous combustion is actually slow, localized burning, misunderstood due to poor documentation or incomplete analysis.
And whose job was it to complete the analysis? The alliteration folks. By that I mean the scientific skeptics.
No, it was not there. It's not their job.
Yeah, it is.
Obviously not.
Is it not? Why
No
would it not?
scientist is going to every murder scene and be like,
No, but if
let's
it's this
go and
strange-
study this for 3 whole years.
But if it's this strange, like science community
They're not
must be
going-
interested.
They're obviously not. Why do you think a scientist has that much free time in his life to go to every scene and be like, I like
Experience.
this. I like
Experience.
that.
Experience.
No, they just follow the report that they get from these investigators.
Editor.
I was going to say investigators. or
Investigators.
Investigators. And I was like, wait, no. that's a show.
Legendary of a show. Legendary of a the mockumentary, by the way.
The Indian Australian accent is so funny in that show.
None of them are Indian.
Oh, sorry, that's
None
not
of them are
investment.
Indian.
Oh my god, I'm talking about that other show where the twin boys.
Oh my god. The Unlisted.
Yeah, that show.
But they
All the nannies and all the English, the Indian Australian English they speak is amazing.
okay. So
Come
yeah.
on, beta.
Yeah. It's no, it's literally hilarious. And okay, so in physics we were learning about alpha, beta, gamma.
Yeah.
Okay, and there's this one dude in my class, and he says beta as beta.
Beta.
Okay, and
Beta.
as in beta, like sun in
yeah.
how you would pronounce it in like Hindu. And every time I'm like, is he calling someone his son? Because the first few time it happened, I was really confused. I was really damn confused. Because he didn't say alpha and gamma. He just said beta. Yeah. Yeah, thanks. So you're just like flicking your hand to make me shut up.
No, I'm saying move on.
God damn it. Talking about beta, the elderlies exist.
What?
The elderlies exist, and you know what this scientific skeptics say about the
Scientific skeptic.
scientific skeptics? Yes. What is it? Is it not the scientific skeptics? The scientific skeptics. I've been saying it right, and you're just making me doubt myself. You. Okay, right. Back to the alliteration, folks. They argue that many of the spontaneous human combustion cases involve the elderly, like I was saying, and sedentary individuals, which increases the likelihood of unnoticed ignition, slow reaction times, and reduced oxygen flow in the room, which, all of this kind of affects how a fire burns. And don't worry, your beta won't get affected by this.
I hope for your sake someone's laughing there. So still, right? Skeptic.
Literally going crazy over that.
Skeptics.
But your beta won't be affected, but your nano will. I'm not threatening your nano.
I don't think anyone thought that till you said that. Skeptics often fail to address why the surroundings remain largely untouched, or why such complete incineration occurs without flames spreading. So are you done?
I'm so sorry.
So the Wick effect may explain some cases, but obviously it does not explain all.
Now we're getting over the alliteration, folks, and we're going into the second, group, which is smaller. So it is a smaller group, and that's the forensic agnostics, which is the forensic investigators and pathologists who remain open-minded, but they're not yet convinced. So they admit that some of the spontaneous human combustion cases defy the norms of fire science and human anatomy.
So these experts focus on what's missing in standard explanations. So the absence of a clear ignition source, the intensity and completeness of the burn, the preservation of surrounding objects, the greasy residue sometimes found outside the immediate burn area.
So I feel like this is your this is clearly your middle people,
Yeah.
right? Because they're claiming that spontaneous human combustion, it isn't supernatural. Sorry, they aren't claiming that it's supernatural, but they're also not ready to say that it's fully okay. So
I hit the straw all the way up to my teeth. Ouch.
okay,
I'm
so
so sorry.
so they didn't hear what you said. I don't think they did. But what she did was she has a metal straw and she hit it all the way up to her teeth, and then
I'm in pain.
yeah. Didn't you like crack a
Ouch.
part of your teeth before with
Yeah, but
with the same metal bottle or something?
yeah, that was a front tooth, and now this is the side one. But that one chipped. This one did not.
Okay, then it's
So I
good then.
guess the straw is better than the bottle.
Is it though? That means
In
your
some
metal
cases,
bottle
it is.
is stronger.
Yeah.
So if it's like
Yeah,
falls-
smart ass. Look at a straw. Look at a bottle. Which do you think is smart?
like a
Smarter?
sword.
Which do you think is stronger?
I thought
Your brain cells are leaking. Please collect
it's just like a leaking towel just at the side of my brain.
with a straw.
You're crazy. You're joking. You're actually joking. And there's metal bottle at the end of it collecting it.
Brain cells for
And
sale.
anytime I have to
Brain
go,
cells
anytime I have
for
to, oh
sale.
my god,
Brain cells for sale.
anytime I have to go for an exam, I take the bottle and I like put stuff back in through the straw.
Yeah, because that's how human brains work.
You never know.
Brain cells for
Oh
sale.
my god, you're so annoying. So talking about the middle ground people, um, spontaneous human combustion, it's not a proof for the paranormal, but it's a failure of current forensic models to fully account for an extremely rare type of burn.
So one issue that they often raise is confirmation bias. If a coroner
Coroner.
expects cigarette ignition, they may dismiss evidence that contradicts it. And because
Guys, this is another reason why you don't
and
smoke
because
cigarettes.
and because SHC cases are so rare, few investigators ever encounter maybe one in their lifetime, which kind of makes the pattern quite hard to identify, right? Like there's some people who just don't see these cases at all, and then there's
Yeah.
some who sees like maybe once their whole lifetime, and you're like, someone died. God knows how they just burnt. Let's go back home.
And I genuinely like.
See, these are the people who don't have full passion, so they're more worried about going home.
So therefore,
it
they
all-
don't work for
tying
the
it
30
all back.
years. Good job. Proud of you.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I'm great that way.
so genuinely, I don't know how this doesn't bother some people because I do know that
They're
some
normal.
bitch. So because some people will just see this entire crime scene and be like, okay, cool, this is what these people are saying, so I can just continue to live my life. But I think if I were to ever go to this kind of place and see what shit has gone down over here, I would be thinking about it for the rest of my sad life.
That's why you don't work.
That's why I'm still in school.
Yeah.
They still have to corrupt my mind.
Yeah, because life hasn't hit you yet.
Yeah, they still have to
When it
corrupt my
hits
mind.
you, then you'll crumble and you'll have nothing left.
And
in your
fall
life.
into depression.
Yeah, then you become like
It's
all of
not
us.
like it's already hanging on by a thread.
Then you look like all of us.
Yeah, that's sad. Working for 30 years in the same place. Just don't you get bored?
Maybe they don't. That's what I'm saying. You have to be extremely passionate about what
Yeah.
you're doing.
And you have to like your boss. If they don't constantly keep changing.
Yeah.
I think if you work in a place, you've seen your boss change at least more than 3 times. I don't think a boss stays in one place for more than 10 years. No, for more than like 5 years. And I'm not talking like top of the line boss. I'm talking like place managers. What's it called?
Yeah, yeah.
Because like everyone moves on.
Department heads.
Department heads, like, or unless they're the people working for 30 years and they're making everyone else miserable. That's why they're staying for the 30 years.
Could be.
Okay, and then we've got the ACs. I quite like their name because I
Not
can.
to be confused with air conditioning.
No, these people are the anomalist community, and I shall be calling air conditioning and the anomalous community for the rest of my life. No, I will not. That was a joke. Was it?
Moving on.
Yes. We have reached the third group after all of the nonsense we have been talking about for the past 20 plus minutes. But yes, the third group, which is the anomalous community, who believe that spontaneous human combustion might be evidence of unknown forces, whether biological, energetic, or even paranormal. Oh my god! Human combustion is what happened to Mary Winchester.
So they include parapsychology.
Can you acknowledge my comment?
No, we know that didn't happen
Mary
because.
Winchester experienced spontaneous human combustion.
No, we know that's not true because.
Because it was the demon. Ha ha ha.
Yeah.
Okay, but in the report, what would it go down as? Spontaneous human combustion. There was no ignition.
It was a house fire because if you remember, their whole house burnt. Smart ass.
Their whole house.
Anyway, so they include parapsychologists, independent researchers, and those who believe that certain individuals are capable of producing internal heat beyond normal psychological limits. Sorry, physiological limits. And they're often linked to states of emotion, spiritual crisis, or repressed energy.
And some refer to Eastern traditions like Kundali Kun say it for me. Kundalini energy, which is believed to rise through the spine and can cause physical transformations or even death if improperly awakened. And others speculate about bioelectromagnetic discharges and internal chemical reactions or unmeasured metabolic anomalies.
There are even fringe theories involving external interferences such as microwaves, electromagnetic field, or targeted energy weapons. But these remain speculative with no empirical support.
And still, this group plays an important role in the spontaneous human combustion discussion because they keep asking the question that everyone else avoids. Like, what if this isn't just misunderstood fire behavior? And what if it's something we genuinely haven't discovered yet? So, we've got like the public's fascination and the media impact, right?
And SHC's mystery has captured the public imagination for centuries. It's appeared in novels, documentaries, tabloids, and horror movies. But that visibility also brings skepticism and reputation for sensationalism.
And in many ways, spontaneous human combustion became a kind of cultural punchline, and it was lumped in with urban legends, alien abductions, and Bigfoot sightings. And this that association made serious investigation like less credible in the eye of the scientific community.
But just because something is rare or misunderstood doesn't mean it isn't real. And SHC's documented forensic record gives it a degree of credibility that most paranormal phenomena don't have.
So where exactly does that leave us?
Honestly, at a crossroad, right? Because
Supernatural
on one
reference?
side, because on one side, those who believe that there's nothing mysterious about it just misunderstood fire, and those who believe we still don't have all the data that the combustion maybe in some cases may truly be anomalous.
And coming up next, right, we've got our final segment, which is a review of the most credible cases remaining, and you've got remaining questions and whether spontaneous human combustion is real or just the ultimate forensic illusion.
So, after all the research, forensic detail, historical records, and theories, we arrive at literally the final question. Is I cannot. Oh my god. here I am just saying, and she starts acting like a dog which is licking
It's
itself.
a cat.
Sorry, a cat is just licking itself and basically.
Okay, it's like when they lick themselves and they rub their like.
That's how they
hand.
clean themselves.
Yeah, that's what I was doing.
Yeah,
But I
exactly.
wasn't actually licking myself. I was just like imitating, like I was licking myself, and then I was like rubbing it on my head.
So the question is:
Am I
is
okay?
spontaneous human combustion real?
India wants to know. Are you okay? Okay, I don't think you are. But to answer your question, which you only seem to care about more than me, it depends how you define the word.
Sorry, it's too late for the sob story.
The story of my life. it it really depends on how you define real. Because if you're asking whether people have been found horrifically burnt under conditions that don't match any known fire's behavior, the answer is yeah.
I would just like to clear for people who are listening to us. We did not overdub horrifically. It wasn't like we went back
Did it
while
sound like that?
editing
Did it
and we
sound
just
like that?
added her saying horrifically because she's like, been found horrifically burnt.
Did it sound like
Yeah,
that?
it was like a totally different.
No.
Like, I don't know why just that one word stood out.
Really? That's okay. I did not think it did. But there are like dozens of well documented cases.
Yeah,
Some with photographic and
Can you
forensic
stop?
evidence. I'm just
So,
showing them that none
the
of
victims were real, the burns were real, the deaths were real. What's unclear is whether what we call spontaneous human combustion is a unique biological event, a rare accident, or a forensic anomaly that just hasn't been solved yet.
So let's like revisit the strongest cases and basically the ones that continue to defy complete explanation. So we've got the case review, the most credible examples so far.
So, Mary Reeser, like we said, 1951, Florida, her body reduced to ash in a chair, slippered foot remains, minimal damage to the room, no open flame. FBI is involved, Wick effect proposed, but no clear ignition source.
I really like how you did that. It's like, you know, at the end of a like a
Yeah,
medicine
a recap.
commercial,
Yeah.
and where like they say all of the side effects, they say it really quickly
Yeah.
because they don't want you to know that you're actually gonna die from the medicine.
Or even in all these insurance
Yeah,
stock markets. Sorry.
yeah. If you lose all of your money, we won't reimburse it. You can go die off in a ditch. It's like okay, and then we've got Mr. Henry Thomas in 1980 in Wales. So his body burned while sitting in a chair. The skull remained, slippers intact, room undamaged, and the cause of the fire is still undetermined.
Then we have Michael Faraday, which was 2010 in Ireland. The death was ruled as spontaneous combustion by the coroner.
Cotton, I guess. Perfect.
No evidence of arson, malfunction, or fire spread. The fireplace was off, burn limited to his body alone.
Okay, I'm just gonna do it like how you're doing it. Are you ready? If I mess up, it's not my fault. I'm just copying you. Each of these cases is
That's not how I'm talking.
okay. I'm actually gonna do a serious face on. Yeah. The star? Serious? What? Okay, sorry. Getting back on track. Each of these cases fits each of these cases fits the spontaneous human combustion pattern. Victim alone, body consumed, local fire. Local fire. That's what it is. So let's do it my way. So each of the spontaneous human combustion cases fit the pattern of the victim being alone, the body being consumed, there being localized fire, no ignition evidence, and all of the surroundings being preserved.
And yet, even with high resolution crime scene photography, modern autopsy techniques, and experienced investigators, the actual mechanism remains elusive. So, possibilities what could actually be happening?
So, if spontaneous human combustion is real and it's not just misunderstood, then we're dealing with one of a few possibilities. So, number one, you've got an unknown biological process. So, there's some internal chemical or metabolic. I think you're more cat. You're just scratching yourself over there. Weirdo. But oh my god. Okay. we're gonna do this seriously, and not gonna look at you. Okay. So one of the few possibilities is that an unknown biological process, and this basically means that there's some internal chemical or metabolic chain reaction that we haven't discovered yet, and it could be triggered by rare conditions such as diet, illness, stress, or unknown compounds. The second possibility is a unique combustion mechanism, perhaps fat, static, and clothing can combine under like certain rare conditions to create a contained fire, which is hotter and longer burning than what anyone realized. The third possibility we've got is a misunderstood fire dynamic. Maybe certain homes and materials like like certain body types create like a perfect storm scenario where slow burning fire appears spontaneous and is extremely hard to detect afterwards.
Then we have forensic illusion, right? So perhaps SHC is not a distinct event, but the result of multiple misunderstood variables. An accidental ignition that burns long enough to destroy a body and leaves the scene so strange it mimics a mystery. Or if you look a lightly more on the fringe of science, a rare energetic or electromagnetic event, right? So it's something deeply unusual, like a bioelectric surge or an interaction with an unknown environmental factor that causes sudden ignition.
So the last one has no empirical support, but it is important to recognize because history is full of phenomena once considered impossible until science caught up. So what we still don't know is a lot.
We don't know what ignites the fire in SHC cases without matches or electric sources. We don't know how a body can burn at cremation level temperatures without destroying nearby objects. We don't know how long these fires burn because no one has ever seen them happen. And we don't know why it affects so few people despite shared traits.
And most importantly, we don't know if this is even like just even one phenomena, or like are all spontaneous human combustion cases the same type of events, or are we grouping unrelated anomalies under one unsettling label?
So the truth is, SHC might not be a real phenomena at all. And it might be just the name we give to our inability to understand or explain something deeply rare and deeply uncomfortable.
But even as science progresses, the most famous cases remain unsolved. And that's why spontaneous human combustion endures. Not as a pseudoscience, not as folklore, but as a small fiery question mark still flickering at the edge of human understanding.
So some mysteries fade with time, but this one, it lingers, quietly and uncomfortably.
Because there's something deeply unsettling about the idea that the human body, the thing we live inside, the thing we are, like the thing we literally trust and rely on, could just one day ignite out of the blue, not by fire, not by crime, but some force we still can't name.
And science may call it misunderstood combustion, skeptics may call it coincidence, but the questions haven't gone away. Not when the evidence keeps coming back in the same strange shape: fire without flame, ash without destruction, cause without explanation.
But the skeptics are not calling it a coincidence. The skeptics are saying it's your fault.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That there's just, it's a coincidence that, it's nothing else is burnt around because you haven't understood how fire works.
That's it's all your fault. What is
Yeah,
wrong
I
with
mean, what are
you?
you doing for 30 years if you don't know how
30 years is
fire
back.
works?
Um,
And they're like, sorry, it's 30 years, we're so done with fire. And they're like, yeah, obviously, that's how you don't know how it works. You have to update yourself with the new technologies of fire and the new way, the new generation of fire, how it works. You
yeah.
can't live in your
The
30
new
year old.
generation though. But
Yeah, you can't
is
live in
it
your
the new
30-year-old.
generation? Because it's been around since 1951. That's just the most famous cases. It could be like since the 1500s.
Exactly. So fire could have been fire for so long. So the grandfather fire will not act like the newborn fire, will he?
Correct, correct, correct. I understand it. And maybe That's what spontaneous human combustion really is, like a grandfather and a child just sparring off together.
Yeah.
Right? And truly, it's not a phenomenon, it's not a hoax.
Oh my god. SHC fires are the criminals.
Uh,
They're the serial
arsonists?
killers who
They
are
just-
a few in the whole
Mm,
community of fires. Amazing.
I get it. I understand. But what they are, they're truly just a reminder that even in a world full of answers, there's just some things that still don't make sense. I mean, not yet, but hopefully soon, I guess.
Or we may just never solve it. But as long as it remains unsolved, this is where it belongs. With us.
Oh! We're so good at
Right
scraping
here in these
walls.
recordings.
Oh, now it's just like these walls. Okay, so this has been real, you guys.
Has it been real though?
Has it? Or maybe it's been.
I mean, technically it is
has
real.
has it been?
It's been real. It is real. It's this unsolved
Or-
episode.
Or has it been unreal and unsolved?
Oh my god, has it?
So you guys, this has been unreal and unsolved. We're gonna see you next time. Unless, of course, we just spontaneously combust before then.
No promises. Now I don't know whether you want us to or you don't want us to. So
Yeah,
anyway,
they're like-
we're not promising.
Okay, it's like, what if they want us to like
So
stop?
anyway, we're not promising about anything.
Yeah, so like if you want us to
It could go
combust,
both ways.
but if you don't want us to combust,
We're not promising.
exactly. Bye.
Bye.
Oh, that was loud.
So, if you're sitting there just wondering what's real and what's not, that's the point. That's basically your glitch. The moment you question the code is the moment the code starts to lose its grip.
And reality isn't stable. It's responsive. And every time you ask, what if, you're opening another crack in the illusion.
So, here's your invitation. Keep spiraling, keep noticing, keep asking why pyramids look like power plants and why your memories feel like they're half downloaded. Because maybe, just maybe, for once you're the one waking up.
And if that's true, then this wasn't just a podcast episode. This was a transmission. A signal from outside the firewall. A reminder that nothing is what it seems and everything is connected.
That was a Wizards of Waverly Place. Everything is not what it seems. Oh my god, they were warning us.
Yeah, they were.
And next time on Unreal Unsolved, we go even deeper. Because if the system is breaking down, what comes after?
Until then, people, trust the spiral and please question the timeline. And remember, just remember, the weirdest part of the story might just be you. Stay unreal. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
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 Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye.